In this video, I will provide you with part 1, which will be a basic stairway layout suggestion for winder stairs. And in the second part of the video, I will provide you with an example of how you might be able to assemble a small 2-story house like this one. And for those of you who are not familiar, I do have another channel, and the house framing construction was already uploaded on that one. But for those of you who don't, here it is. So let's go ahead and take a look at the winder stairs here, and keep in mind that this type of winder stairway might not be approved by your local building department. But for those of you where it is, and you're going to build something like this, let's go ahead and take a look at the most important part of the design. And that's going to be the lines you're going to lay out on the floor, or concrete foundation or raised floor, whatever you're going to be dealing with. So we're going to be going up the stairway like this, and the 3 upper treads are going to line up with the 3 lower treads. And then we're simply going to use a 30-degree angle to locate this mark and this mark. So obviously this one will go straight through, and then we're going to do the same for these 2 over here. And I do have other videos on how to lay out the 30-degree line. And you're going to be able to find those at our website in the home building section, and then the stairs, and then simply click on the winder stairs link on that web page. And for those of you who need some measurements, here they are, 10-inch treads. And then we have a 3-foot by 3-foot winder section with 3 steps, and then another 3-foot by 3-foot winder section with 3 steps. And if you are allowed to build your winder stairs like this, you might be able to add another step into each one of these sections. So instead of having 3 steps, we would have 4 steps. But again, you would need to check with your local building department to verify that information. And next up, part 2, let's go ahead and take a look at the home that these stairs might be able to fit into. Here is a tiny house that I built. It is 10 foot wide, 20 foot long, and I found a set of plans on the internet to build it. And believe it or not, I know you're going to be shocked, there is no possible way I could have gotten the stairs to work the way they had it drawn. And I'm not suggesting I couldn't have made the tread shorter and the risers taller, but that's not what I wanted to do. They basically had the kitchen and the stairway in this area here, and I went ahead and moved the kitchen over to this area here. And the kitchen isn't going to be very big, but you can make it bigger if you want to move your refrigerator. And if you need more information about certain details, feel free to leave that in the comment area. And now, of course, would be a good time to mention that you would need to check with your local building authorities and engineers to verify whether or not you're allowed to build this type of project in your area. Now, we do have 10-inch treads, 7.5-inch tall risers. However, it's the winder stair design that isn't going to meet some building codes. It will meet other building codes, but it's not going to meet the building codes where I live in Southern California. Or should I say, it might not meet them, because you never know what's going to be approved or what's not going to be approved until you ask. Now, I did put a closet underneath the stairway, but I didn't put any of my fire blocks in. But I did put some hangers in to support the stair stringers. And I would imagine that a lot of the winder section, for example, the areas here, might require building hardware to make better connections in this area here. On this side here, I built plenty of stairs like this, where they're sitting on top of some 2x4 posts. But right here is where the problem could be, where we have smaller sections sitting on top of other smaller sections that, of course, are sitting on top of other smaller sections. And for all of you do-it-yourselfers out there who make YouTube videos, now you can copy this video. Believe it or not, I take it as a compliment when someone copies my stuff, or at the very least looks like they've copied my stuff, because they've almost made the exact same video. Next up, let's go ahead and install the floor joist, 2x8 spaced 16 inches on center. And of course we have our ceiling backing in there. And the stairs will connect to a double joist. And I have a little funky thing over here that your engineer might not approve. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So basically what I did was used a single hanger here. However, you could always use a double inverted hanger here or concealed hanger. And you're going to need to be really careful driving these nails in over here to avoid splitting this part of the stair stringer off. And let's go ahead and put our doubler back together. Let's go ahead and swing over. Give you another view of this area here. And I just barely have 3 foot in the clear here also. And that could become a problem if we install the upper guardrail incorrectly. And don't forget that some of these closets do require fire-rated assemblies and sometimes even fire sprinklers. Top view of it there. And of course, a nice stairway design. These stairs took me almost as much time to build as the entire rest of the house. I mean, I think it took me about 20 minutes to build the floor, and I'd be shocked if it even took that. Floor sheathing, 3/4 inch OSB, and you can see where I extended the riser all the way across. The reason why I did that was so that I could get a little better nailing for my hanger by moving the hanger back a little farther away from the front edge of the stair stringer. Next up, let's go ahead and install the upper wall framing, and let's go ahead and take a tour of that. Going to have a bathroom here. You can see where the bathroom is hogging up a lot of room here. Remember, this is 10 foot wide on the outside. It's a little smaller on the inside, and I think this is just a little bit over 7 feet here. But I did the best I could with the bathroom, and I do have another idea for the bathroom because I think we could move it to the front of the building so that we could get rid of this hallway here. Hallways, remember, are wasted space, and in tiny homes, you can't or shouldn't have any hallways. And I went ahead and put the windows on this side here. You can always put some on the front. If you use a moment frame, I do not know if something like this could be built without steel. And if this video does well, I'll be glad to provide a little more information about that. Now, I also went ahead and provided you with a flat ceiling here so that you wouldn't need to build any rake walls or angled walls here and then cut seat cuts on your rafter. Instead, what we're going to do is install rip strips on top. So this is just a 2x4 that's been ripped in half at an angle. And I do have other videos on that. If you need more information, you should be able to find it at the website or on YouTube. And these will just simply nail to the top of the ceiling joist. And we're using 2x8. You might need to use thicker joist in areas where it snows, or you might be required to use thicker insulation, or even have a space for ventilation above the insulation but below the roof sheathing. And for the fascia board, if you've watched some of my videos before, I'm going to use a 2x4 spacer here and then attach the fascia board to those spacers. You can always use a 1x here, 1x4, and you can see where we got a nice angle on the top, but it's flat on the bottom. Let's go ahead and install our roof sheathing and then take a final look at what this building might look like if you framed it in your backyard. So again, if you have any questions, because I really don't know how well it would hold up if a strong wind came and blew from this side or the other side, I think it could just knock this baby right over. And if this isn't bad enough, I saw one of these that was 3 stories. And I would imagine that's going to require a lot more steel to prevent that one from falling over. Hold on, it's not over yet. In the next part of the video, I will provide you with a few methods you can use to shape the lumber used at the top of the roof framing. How they could create a sloped roof on a flat roof or a structure with level joist. And to do that, we're going to need to figure out the length of the roof that is going to be sloping. And in our example here, we're going to be using 10 feet, a 20-foot span that we will be breaking up into 2 sections. Now, the minimum slope for a roof is usually going to be 1/4 inch per foot. And an example of that would be that it needs to rise 1/4 inch vertically for every 12 inches horizontally. And if I take 1/4 of an inch and multiply it by 10, I'm going to end up with 2.5 inches, allowing us to use a 2x4 that is 3.5 inches. Remember, I said the minimum slope is going to be 1/4 of an inch per foot. However, it can always be larger, unless specified on the building plans. And that's what we're going to do here. I'm going to use a 2x4 and just simply draw a line from one side to the other side, and then simply cut the piece of wood into 2 pieces. Then I'm going to take each piece and attach it to the existing roof. And you can use nails or building hardware to do something like this. Obviously, you won't be able to use a 3¼ inch nail on the sections that might be larger than 2 inches, but you can definitely use the nails on the lower part of the rip strips. And then we're going to use toenails to attach the larger sections, or the taller sections, I should say, that we wouldn't be able to drive a nail straight down through the top of it in. And you're going to need to have the angled nails on both sides. Maybe 16 inches on center, 24 inches on center. And you can always use building hardware if you need to. And for something like this, I would try to block it after if you could. I like to block it like this with a larger block that will help me connect all of these pieces together. However, if you're working with an existing building, you might not be able to do that. You'll just use smaller blocks. In this video, we are going to add a deck to our small 2-story house, and we're going to simply attach it with a ledger and then use a couple of posts with a beam to support it. And then we're going to set the floor joist on top of the beam. But before we do that, we are going to need a concrete foundation, and we're going to be using a couple of post base connectors to connect the posts to the concrete footings. And these connectors will be embedded in the concrete footings. We're going to have a 12-inch by 12-inch or 1 foot by 1 foot, and it's going to be 1 foot deep. And our slab is going to be 4 or 5 inches thick. And before we put the ledger on, we're going to be using a membrane. I like to use a waterproofing membrane to go behind the ledger. And of course, there are a variety of different materials you can use for that. You can see here where the membrane is going to go below it and above it. Now, I want to do this in order how I would do it, and you can do it however you want to, but I would suggest framing everything up to the floor and not installing the floor sheathing. However, if you can get to everything below, then go ahead and install the floor sheathing. And before we install our ledger, we are going to install our membrane, and even some water-resistant materials might work just fine also. Keep in mind there is a difference between a waterproof and a water-resistant material. I like to use a waterproof material here. And it doesn't have to be sticky on one side because we are going to be installing our building paper underneath this part of it. So you could always install the building paper first and maybe start the building paper even with the floor framing and then install this layer. If you're worried about having problems installing the exterior building paper later. And keep in mind that I'm not providing you with every single thing you need to know here. And a little planning on your part might help with this process. And I will be installing bolts. I'm not going to lag screw this into the joist. And I'm going to install a nut and a washer on this side so that I can always tighten it if it needed to be tightened. You're not going to be able to do that from the other side once you install the drywall. And you could always have 2 bolts at the end here. And my spacing is 16 inches on center and staggered. And next up, let's go ahead and take a look at the back here, where again we're using washers. And don't forget to install the ceiling backing after you install the bolts, because you might not be able to install these bolts if the ceiling backing's in the way. So there is going to be a gap between the ceiling backing and this joist. Next up, let's go ahead and pan back here a little bit. And let's not forget that the membrane is not going to be cut until after the framing, or at the very least, after the floor sheathing has been nailed. And now you can either work on the deck or build the rest of the house, or at the very least, frame the rest of the house. Keep in mind that scaffolding might be easier to go around the house without the deck, or it might be better to have the deck built Just don't install the decking until after everything is built so you don't ruin the decking. Maybe throw some scrap pieces of plywood down to create an area you could work on while protecting the deck joist. And don't forget, I'm just providing you with some of the basics here. You can always put a cantilever on if you need to, and you can always raise the beam here and use hangers instead of setting the joist on top of the beam. And if you need to slope the joist so that the water will run in this direction, you can simply lower the beam here. Everything that I'm doing is level. So here you can see the hangers. Joists are spaced 16 inches on center. And we're going to go ahead and install some blocks here. Another view of it there. We're going to use 4x6 on the outside. Instead of a doubler, sometimes a double joist will allow water to leak in between the joist. And that could accelerate wood decay. And of course our inverted or concealed hangers over here. And you might be able to get away with just using a single joist over there. I'll leave that up to you. And of course we do have a 2x8 ledger. This is pretty common for a ledger to be a little bit larger than the joist. Next up, let's take a look at it from above here. Now remember, any water that gets behind the ledger is going to drain safely away from that area, as long as this section right here overlaps the paper below. Next up, let's install some L metal. And our L metal is going to be 4 inches by 4 inches. Or 4 inches up, 4 inches out. And you can either notch it around the door or cut it here and then bend it over, just like we did with the waterproofing membrane here. Next up, let's go ahead and install our decking. We're going to use 2x6, and our 2x6 will have an 1/8 of an inch gap in between each board. And even though I didn't install any fascia board here, you can always install some fascia board and then have the decking overlap over the fascia board. And I didn't do some of those things because I wanted to focus on something else in this video, and that's going to be about any water that could get trapped back here. And I know there are plenty of ways you can prevent that from happening, and maybe you've seen this one here before, and that's going to be to prevent the water from getting trapped over here and forcing it to come out each side. We're going to cut some slots in between each one of the joists. And those slots are going to be about 1 inch wide and about 1/2 inch deep, and come out over the metal like this to allow for water to drain out of each one of these sections. And of course you wouldn't want these notches over or near the joist. And don't be confused, something like this can allow water to leak around and stick to the bottom of the metal and come back and leak off of the ledger or the joist. And of course leak on the people below coming out of the front door. And of course you can always cut the notch a little bit further away if you want a larger hole here. And I think something like this you'd be able to clean it out easy if debris got stuck in there. Just kind of zoom in on it there. And we notched this decking board over the metal. And I kind of like this idea. I've never seen it done before. I've seen versions of it, but I've never seen it done to where you would have a larger area here. And of course with this one here, I just simply bent the metal down a little bit. You would just cut it in maybe about 1/2 inch and then bend it down. This would allow for more of the water to drip off instead of rolling back on the top of the metal. And of course they will run all the way down to the other side of the ledger. And keep in mind that these are only suggested ideas. You might need to check with your local engineers or building authorities to verify the information in this video. And the last thing I want to point out in the video will be furniture and door locations. Now the reason why I moved the door over to here was to allow for a table and some chairs. Keep in mind that this deck isn't going to be very big. It's only going to be 6 foot by 10 foot. And if I put the door in the center, then I might have a difficult time navigating around larger furniture items. However, that might not be the case if I place the door over to one side. Which brings me back to one of my favorite things mentioned often in my videos, and that will be to try and plan for as many things as you possibly can during the design phase of the project and not after it's built. In this video, I am going to move one of the walls. If you remember, we had a bathroom over here in the first video, and I'm going to move the bathroom over here. But what I'm going to do is just kind of orient you so that we can switch over to a floor plan where we can do some redesigning. So basically what we have is our stairwell here and then a bedroom here in our new design. And I moved this window over a little bit so that it wouldn't be blocking the door, or should I say so that the door wouldn't be blocking the window. And I went ahead and installed a shower, sink, and a toilet, and then 2 pocket doors and a closet. And this design here allows us to have a larger bedroom and lose the wasted space for the hallway that was over here. And even though this looks like it will work, this design might require a small sink. Otherwise, it might not work. And you can see here where if this bathroom was a little smaller, you might have a difficult time opening the door to go into the shower if you're going to have a door. This design right here might work better with a shower curtain. Let's go ahead and zoom in so you can get a better idea of what this plan looks like before heading to our next plan, where we're going to move the closet door from here to here. And the door could also swing into the closet also. Now, the reason why you might not consider doing this is because if the door's over here, you'll be able to put a dresser or something else in the bedroom that you might need, providing you with more wall space in the bedroom. It's probably not going to be a big deal if you have the door over here. And with our next design, we're going to go ahead and swing the door into the bathroom. And in our next design, we're going to add a bathtub and swing the door towards the bathtub. And in this design here, we can put a larger sink in. But where did our closet go? Because we're probably not going to be putting a door over here anymore. But we could always do something like this. Put a shelf and a pull in here. Even though we might not be able to hang anything over here, it would still give us some much needed closet space if we were going to install a full-sized bathroom. And of course, I swung the door the other way, and this might not be a big deal because the door could swing all the way over to here if you don't want to swing it up against the bathtub. Next up, let's go ahead and install a pocket door so we don't have to worry about the door hitting the bathtub or swinging all the way over to here. And then we'll go ahead and install some bifolding doors. However, if we install the bifolding doors, you can see where we're going to have a problem hanging any clothes in this closet. So there it is, my thoughts on moving the bathroom over and maybe installing a closet or some type of storage and getting rid of the wasted space for the hallway. In this video, we're going to go over a design problem that I hope you never run into. So you can see here where we have the toilet flange sticking up about 2 inches. And the reason for that is because there isn't enough room for the pipe because the joists are not tall enough. So even though the engineer or your span charts allow you to use smaller joists on some of your projects and this tiny home like we have here, it will definitely be something you need to think about. And the easiest fix for this project here will be to simply lower the plumbing pipe and build a drop ceiling underneath the area. And I'm not about to suggest that's going to work every time, but it does seem like the best option here. And don't forget, it's not just going to be the pipe, it's going to be the fittings that those pipes are going to connect to. For someone who might plan on pre-assembling these plumbing components to get the measurements they need to figure out if those pipes will actually fit in the height of those joists. And for a 3 or 4 inch pipe, that's going to be an 1/8 of an inch minimum. And for the 2 inch and the 1.5 inch pipes, it's going to need to be 1/4 of an inch per foot minimum drainage slope. So again, this could also be a problem area over here if you don't take it into consideration, because you can see here where the curve is going to be protruding from the wall and the bottom of the ceiling, making it difficult to install our drywall correctly. Now, another option that you might have will be to run the plumbing in this wall here or the wall over here. But since the kitchen is going to be in this area here, it's not going to be a big deal to drop the ceiling a little bit and then have it extend out about 1 inch or 2 past the cabinets if you're going to be using them in that area. And for those of you who have been watching my channel for a few years, you have a pretty good idea how important planning is for your project. And this is just another one of those things you're going to have to plan for, especially if you're going to be using smaller joist heights because the span charts allow you to. And thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, let us know by hitting the thumbs up button or letting us know in the comment area.